We are in the middle of this pandemic with a peak still to come, but also important, I think, for us to look forward. And while South Africa has decided to bolster the social security net, directing around 50 billion rand to those affected by the crisis over the next 6 months, the country needs more than emergency provisions. It needs a permanent form of economic security, be it in the form of a universal basic income or some other form of income guarantee for all. That view has been put forward by Dr. Hannah Dawson, a post-doctoral fellow at Wits University here in Johannesburg and its Society for Work and Politics. She joins us now via Skype. Hannah, good afternoon to you and thanks for joining us. You ask this key question in a piece that you've written. Might the reasons for guaranteeing economic security be valid even without a global pandemic? You go on to say economic distress was the norm for many before the coronavirus outbreak. I'm sensing that you're saying we're now at a tipping point here, a real sense of urgency.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, really what we've been trying to argue is that, COVID-19 has put a spotlight on the situation of the most vulnerable and the most insecure in our society. And of course, COVID-19 has exacerbated that insecurity in very dramatic forms. But it's not new. It's not a new crisis. It's purely an exacerbation. And we're in trying to think about our economy and life and our society beyond this crisis. We need to be thinking about the economic insecurity of many that is structural and has been with us for a much longer period of time prior to this lockdown.
So one of the suggestions that is put forward by you and your colleagues is that we need a permanent form of economic security. And you float the idea of a universal basic income. It's given to all and then taxed back for people who simply don't need it. It's possibly a good idea, but in reality, given the economic ropes that we are against at the moment, how feasible is that?
Well, I think it's important to say that we are ready to start by saying we already have a significant social grant system in South Africa that goes to a third of South Africans. But up until this point, the ANC government has been incredibly resistant to expanding that to unemployed South Africans. And this, the introduction of this new emergency 6-month grant is the first time the government has had to really acknowledge and take some responsibility for the fact that our economy is failing the majority, and that unemployment is a structural concern that hits 40% of South Africans. So, when we think about the costing and the feasibility of this grant, that conversation can take a number of different forms. The point I'm trying to make is that we have to think about forms of economic security for the majority of South Africans outside of waged work.
Finish your thought.
No, just to say that, our current economic setup, but certainly the one we're going to have when we've got to the other side of this pandemic, is one in which the majority are not going to be able to access their basic livelihood through wage employment. So we have to begin to think about new ways of structuring our economy, and in particular, ways of getting money and income into the hands of the majority of South Africans.
But as we stand right now, I'd suggest to you that is nigh impossible. We'll hear this afternoon, for instance, from the SARS commissioner, who will say that the tax revenue loss in April was close to 300 billion rand.
Yeah, no, I mean, I heard that this morning. So certainly we have to think about what is fiscally possible, what is politically possible. But I would suggest that we also have to think about the cost of not putting money in the hands of a growing unemployed population, and to think also about the benefits of the kind of stimulus dimension of the ways in which the current social grant system works, and that by expanding that, including working-aged capable, physically capable bodies who've historically been excluded, not only allows them to not starve in the most drastic form, but also is a stimulus to local businesses, local economies, and there are a whole bunch of other economic benefits that you see particularly strongly in local economies. And we see that, and we have a lot of evidence from that from the existing social grant system.
Dr. Hannah Dawson, it's not just an economic issue, though. You also interestingly raise that it's a mindset issue. You say the biggest source of resistance to providing economic security is the idea that people have to work for money, that you can't get money for nothing. Many people will battle with that concept, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we see this in South Africa all the time, even with the current social grants. You know, there's a concern that the money you give through the child support grant and others, increases dependency on the state, increases. So there's a lot of myths around how that money gets used, and this very strong attachment that people only deserve money if they've worked for it. And so, like you've said, the challenge here, or the opportunity perhaps of the moment we're living in, is to not only think, is to also think about how we think about work and money, and that we are going to have to think about ways in which we structure our economy and redistribution that de-link work from income, because with automation and technology, we're going to have to be thinking about structuring our economies in ways in which economic growth does not necessarily equal job creation or in the magnitude that we need. And so extending the social grant system to groups of people such as those currently unemployed, or thinking about the introduction of some kind of universal basic income, provide very tangible measures for us to begin to de-link securing basic income security and wage labor, which historically have been deeply tied together. And the resistance to giving money directly to people, a lot of that resistance comes down to our deep attachment to waged work, which is wrapped up with ideas of citizenship and family and gender. And this resistance is not only from elites and from the top. You see it across societies, and in South Africa and globally. But changing dynamics in the nature and the future of work are going to require us to begin to think about these things in different ways.
You're absolutely right. It's a social and economic conundrum that we really do have to face. We'll leave it there. Dr. Hannah Dawson, thank you very much indeed, postdoctoral fellow at the Society, Work and Politics Institute at Wits University.